We may not have had a game during Week 9, but that doesn't mean the Birds weren't putting in the work. We'll go over the latest Eagles news that happened over this past bye week, including the latest trade acquisitions before the deadline, and what do the Birds need to do to get the win over the Green Bay Packers this upcoming Monday. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into it. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Second and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast powered by Old City Sports Network, the best network for all your Philadelphia sports needs. This is your host, Michael Roscoe. Now, before I get into all the Eagles topics this week, I just want to share a bit of personal news, and that is that I am now officially a married man. My now wife and I got married this past Saturday, and it was easily the best day of our entire lives. And you know it wouldn't be an Eagles fan wedding without a tush push, a football toss instead of a garter toss, and a custom Eagles jersey as our wedding book. Overall, it was such a magical wedding, and I'm glad to be moving forward in my podcast career as a husband. But enough about me, let's get into the Eagles content you have all been waiting for, starting with a little bit of news. Starting off, former Eagles long snapper Rick Lovato calls it a career. The two-time Super Bowl champion and 2019 Pro Bowler played with Philadelphia from 2017 to the end of the 2024 season, before playing with his current team, the Los Angeles Chargers. Lovato joined the Eagles during the 2016-2017 season to replace John Dornbos after an injury and would remain an Eagle for the next several years. Long snappers don't get their flowers that often, but Lovato deserves his, so congrats to him on an amazing career and best of luck to you and your family in this next chapter. Next, the Eagles made a few smaller roster moves, including releasing guard Sua Opeta off the practice squad, making way for wide receiver Danny Gray. Additionally, edge rusher Patrick Johnson was released from the active roster, and that is due to the fact that the Eagles have opened up the 21-day practice window for edge rusher Nolan Smith Jr., and the timing couldn't have been perfect because for some reason we are still fucking dealing with injuries, and the fact that edge rusher Azeez Ojulari has now found himself on IR, where he will miss a minimum of 4 games. In addition to Ojulari, safety Marcus Epps also lands on the injury reserve due to a currently undisclosed injury. Smith Jr. returned to practice earlier this week, and hopefully he's able to take the field this Monday night. And the biggest piece of news, the NFL trade deadline was this past Tuesday, and the Eagles made some important and necessary moves. In last week's episode, I talked about the trade for former Jets cornerback Michael Carter II, and since then, the Eagles have added an additional corner, and this player specifically came as a shock to me, if I'm being quite honest. In a trade that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, the Birds traded away a 2026 6th-round pick to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for a 2027 7th-round pick and cornerback Jair Alexander. Yeah, you heard that right. Additionally, the Birds addressed the need for an effective pass rusher by trading away a 2026 3rd-round pick to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for edge rusher Jalen Phillips. Now, let's get the big negative aspect of these players out of the way, and that is that they are both pretty injury prone. In 2024 alone, Alexander tore his PCL, which required surgery, and missed time separately due to a shoulder injury. And then the season before that, he dealt with back, shoulder, and multiple groin injuries throughout that season. Meanwhile, Jalen Phillips missed the entire season last year after playing 4 games due to a torn ACL, and then the season before that, he tore his Achilles. These are big injuries, and statistically, the more injured a player becomes, the more likely they become re-injured later in their careers. Now, both of these guys have had back-to-back years with significant injuries, so hopefully the rest of 2025 is good for them because nobody deserves 3 seasons in a row with significant season-ending injuries. But anyway, I like these trades because, setting the injury factor aside, they offer the potential for upside, even with Jair Alexander. But let me explain. So, looking at Jalen Phillips, for example, he was under Vic Fangio when he was the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, which just so happened to be Phillips' best career season prior to that injury. In 8 games under Fangio, Phillips logged over 40 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and an interception. And then across his career, he's got 26 sacks across 38 games, which I think is pretty good in my opinion. Now, he's reunited with Vic, and he's part of a pass rotation group that has Jalix Hunt, Brandon Graham, Josh Uche, and Nolan Smith pending his return, along with Jahad Campbell. Even though he's primarily an off-the-ball linebacker, he has played some snaps with us at the edge position. Phillips is not only aggressive, but he gets his sacks and makes his plays by playing with high football IQ within the defensive scheme that he is a part of, and with already being familiar with Vic Fangio's style of defense, this gives us an advantage in the sense that he can make almost an immediate impact by not requiring too much time to adapt to a different defensive scheme because he's already familiar with it with being with Vic Fangio. Plus, he'll be on a line with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, and Brandon Graham, among other talented players in a rotational lineup, so he doesn't have to come in and be the immediate hero in this situation. He doesn't even have to be the best player on the line. He just has to be better than the guy in front of him, and I believe he has that talent to be better than a lot of the guys that he faces in front of him on a regular basis. Plus, Phillips is still a talented player despite all these injuries. So far, he's got 3 sacks on the season with 15 total tackles. Do I expect 2023-like numbers out of Phillips? Not necessarily, but I do think his addition is going to be a big help, not only because he's a great player that brings a ton of upside to this Eagles defense and already leads our current Eagles lineup in pressure rate, but depth is added to a position that has seen a ton of injuries already in the first half of the season. And then we have Jair Alexander, who again, like Phillips, has had his share of injuries. However, his fall off concerns me though, because he has demonstrated all-pro caliber play, but hasn't really shown that over the past couple of seasons or so. However, I don't think it's like a super dramatic drop-off. I feel like it's more so just because injuries are holding him back and taking so much time from him away from the game. In the 7 games he played before his injury last year, he logged 16 total tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown, which I feel like is still definitely a lot more than what we've seen in 9 games with Adoree Jackson, Jacorian Bennett, and Keely Ringo combined. So already, this is a positive signing for us, whether we think it is immediately or not. However, unlike Jalen Phillips, I think it'll take a couple of weeks or so before we can see Alexander make an immediate impact. I could be wrong, but I feel like he's going to have a little bit of more of a time to adjust to our defensive scheme, especially when we have a tough schedule ahead of us with Green Bay and Detroit in back-to-back weeks. Additionally, it is concerning that the Packers, a team who was in need of corners, didn't have any issue with letting Alexander go. And then while he was on the Ravens, he barely saw any playing time or was a healthy scratch for a few games. But at this rate, when it comes to the cornerback 2 position, honestly, what have we got to lose? It hasn't worked out with Jackson, Bennett, or Ringo, so it has to work out with somebody, right? To me, if Alexander is able to play decently on the outside, then it doesn't force Cooper DeJean to have to move to the outside when he's better at that nickel position. But now, when you look at it a different way, we have Michael Carter. And so that necessarily wouldn't be a terrible thing because Carter could go to the slot if DeJean is forced to go to the outside. However, I still think it's best to have the players play where they play best. We saw that with Jahad Campbell. He wasn't bad at edge, but he's definitely better at off-ball linebacker. And then we also have that depth and those rotational options available only when it's absolutely needed, such as after an injury. So for me, I like the depth, but Jair is a wait-and-see type of situation. But for what we gave up for him, it's kind of a steal. So I'm hoping this finally gives us some help at that CB2 position. All right, y'all, let's dive into this Week 10 preview. The Birds are coming off a bye week and have a few new additions that could take the field, such as Brandon Graham, Michael Carter, Jalen Phillips, and Jair Alexander. Meanwhile, the Packers are coming off an upset loss to the Carolina Panthers thanks to a last-minute field goal. The Birds will face All-Pro edge rusher Micah Parsons, whom the Packers acquired from Dallas in a blockbuster trade, but at the same time, the Packers are going to have to deal with a defense that includes Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jordan Davis, Zach Bond, and Nakobe Dean. Just absolutely loaded in talent in all areas of the defense. Here are some things that I think the Birds need to do to get a win in primetime in a Monday night NFC showdown. First, we have to do better on third downs, like all third downs. Our third down efficiency on both sides of the ball, if I'm being frank, has been completely ass. On defense, we rank in the bottom 6 in opponent third down conversion rates, and on the offensive side of the ball, we're in the bottom 4. Third down makes a difference. It can make or break a game. It either allows the continuation of a drive and the potential for 3 to 7 points, or it could end a drive and you only have 0 to 3 points depending where you are on the field. We saw it with the Minnesota Vikings when they played us, when they went 1-6 in the red zone, failing to convert on third down or third and goal situations, causing them to end up settling for 5 field goals. Field goals can't always get you wins. For our defense, failing to stop them on third downs just allows the other team to walk into the end zone, and considering our defense is allowing at least 23 points per game, this isn't a good pattern of behavior. We need to be able to contain offenses and prevent them from converting, and on the other side of the ball, we gotta get it past the sticks. So hopefully this week, our coordinators have or will sit down to specifically discuss the issues on third downs and come up with a game plan to solve them. Next, during RPOs, Jalen Hurts should look for either the open draw or seam routes. What I noticed in the Packers game against the Panthers, Green Bay's edge rushers were real quick to shrink and in some cases collapse the pocket, which is no surprise to me when you have fucking Micah Parsons on one side and Rashawn Gary on the other. On multiple occasions, though, I noticed that Panthers quarterback Bryce Young was able to find a lot of success either with just running a quarterback draw out of an RPO up the middle or finding a receiver on a seam route for multiple first down conversions. This shows a weakness on the Packers defense in the sense that their interior defensive linemen can be well contained, and or that their defense leaves a lot of exposed, uncovered space in the middle of the field. If we can utilize that to our advantage, our offense is going to be in good hands. And finally, on the defensive side, we have to bring the pressure like no other. Jordan Love didn't play well against Carolina under pressure. He threw 1 pick into double coverage, and on a 4th and 8 within the red zone, he threw what should have been a pick and what could have been a 105-yard pick 6. He dialed himself way too far back and threw a silly-ass Hail Mary into the end zone with no receiver even being close to where he was throwing. I feel like with how our edge rushers have been this season, Matt LaFleur and the Packers don't expect much from our pass rushers. However, with Nolan Smith eyeing to return and the addition of Jalen Phillips, the extra pressure they bring could catch the Packers off guard and thus likely make Jordan Love make more silly mistakes. Plus, with limited receiver options with Tucker Kraft's unfortunate season-ending injury and Matthew Golden's questionable status, this will make Jordan Love have a harder time finding who he wants to throw to. And plus, on a side note, they were throwing a lot of running back screens. Even before Kraft's injury, they were throwing some screens to him too. So we should be on the lookout for Love to dump off some screens to Josh Jacobs and be able to contain those before he gets beyond the line of scrimmage. All right, y'all, before we end the episode, let's talk about some of our predictions. Look, with the way Howie Roseman has been grinding this past bye week, I have more confidence for our Birds going into this game. We added depth to the corner and edge positions, which allows our rookie linebacker, Jahad Campbell, to move back to his normal position, creating more depth and rotational options for our defense so that we can have the most energized defense on the field at any given time. And with the way we've been able to dial it up significantly in both the pass and the run game, maybe not always at the same time, but across different games, that has been a great thing for us. Yet, with all that, we open up as a 2.5-point underdog. And we know what the Eagles are like when they're underdogs. Hungry dogs run faster. I'm predicting an Eagles win with a 31-20 victory over the Green Bay Packers. I see Dallas Goedert getting into the end zone, both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith getting a touchdown of their own, and a rushing touchdown from Saquon Barkley. All right, y'all, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you all for joining so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok by searching at 2nd and 15. That's 2NDAND15, or by the full name 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast. You can find the audio for each and every single episode releasing Thursday mornings on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Player FM, or wherever you get your podcasts, with the video uploading to YouTube later that same day. This episode, 2nd and 15, and Old City Sports Network are brought to you by Iron and Steel Threads. Check out ironsteelthreads.com and use promo code OldCity10, the number 10, for 10% off the entire website, and a portion of the proceeds go to youth hockey organizations. A great company for a great cause. Check out ironandsteelthreads.com today. Once again, thanks y'all for joining in. This is 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast powered by Old City Sports Network. We'll see you all next week, but don't forget to check out the Monday night game on ABC or ESPN as the Green Bay Packers take on our Philadelphia Eagles. We'll catch you all next time. Don't forget to stay fly like an eagle, and as always, go Birds!